Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a really specific, really frustrating phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
I was going through the stack of research and notes we have for today, and honestly, it felt like I was reading a biography of my own struggles.
I think a lot of people are going to feel that way today.
Right. It's this universal nightmare where you can listen to a podcast or watch a movie, and you just nod along, thinking, "Okay, I get this."
You feel totally confident.
Exactly. You understand 90, maybe 95% of it. And then,
And then the moment comes where you actually have to
yes,
speak.
yes, someone asks you a simple question or, you try to join the conversation. And it's like the connection between your brain and your mouth just gets completely cut.
The signal drops.
You freeze, you stutter, the words are in there, you know they are, but you just can't get them out.
So what you're describing and what the sources heavily focus on today
Yeah.
is the classic definition of the passive trap.
The passive trap.
Right. It is probably the single most common plateau in language learning. You have this really high comprehension.
Which is the passive part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But very low production.
Yeah.
And the problem is most people try to solve this by just doubling down on what they're already doing.
Which doesn't work.
No, they study more grammar rules, they memorize more vocabulary lists. But the materials we're looking at today suggest that this gap between knowing and speaking, it isn't an intelligence gap. It's actually a physiological one.
That's a really important distinction to make right at the start. So just to be clear to everyone listening, we aren't talking about learning more English today.
No, not at all.
We aren't talking about expanding your vocabulary to like Shakespearean levels. We are talking about building a fluency blueprint.
A system.
Right. A set of systems and mindsets designed to unlock the English you already have inside your head. We're going to look at why motivation is actually a trap. We're going to discuss a technique called shadowing.
Which is a total game changer.
It really is. And we're going to figure out how to stop translating in your head. Because we've got some great sources today, but we aren't going to name specific channels or creators. We're just synthesizing the absolute best strategies out there.
And we should probably warn everyone listening, a lot of this advice goes directly against how you were likely taught in school.
Oh, totally.
The traditional classroom method is very linear, right? You learn the word, you learn the grammar, you write the sentence.
But the methods we're diving into today are much more about immersion, muscle memory, and honestly, psychological tricks.
So let's start with the psychology, because I think that's where most of us fail before we even begin.
Yeah, I was struck by how much of the literature today dismisses the idea of motivation.
It really does.
It almost treats motivation like it's a dirty word, or at least a dangerous one to rely on.
Well, it treats motivation as a volatile commodity. We call it the motivation myth. We
Right?
tend to view motivation as fuel, like, I need to get pumped up to study today.
Right, I need to feel inspired to open my book.
But the consensus in the research is that motivation is just an emotion. It's like the weather. Some days it's sunny, some days it rains.
And if your consistency depends on the weather being nice, you're never going to build a habit.
You're building your house on sand.
So if we toss out motivation, what do we replace it with? Because you still need a reason to show up and do the work, right? Especially when it's hard.
You replace it with visual consistency. The sources point to the chain method.
I love this one.
It's deceptively simple. You get a physical calendar.
Like an analog one on the wall.
Yes, something you can physically see. And every day you do your minimum amount of English practice, you mark a big red X on that day.
I've seen this before, and it really changes the goal. You aren't trying to master the past perfect tense today. You're literally just trying to not break the chain.
Exactly. It gamifies the discipline. You are protecting your streak. But there is a very specific, very forgiving rule in the data regarding failure.
Because let's be real, you will miss a day.
You get sick, you travel, life happens. The rule is never miss 2 days in a row.
Why is 2 the magic number? Why not 3?
Because missing 1 day is an outlier. It's just an accident. But missing 2 days is the beginning of a new habit.
Ah, that makes sense.
It sends a signal to your brain that, oh, we don't do this anymore. The research actually suggests that the recovery is more important than the streak itself. Getting back on the horse immediately is what builds the long-term identity of a learner.
This perfectly ties into that kitchen analogy from the notes, which I found, honestly, really confronting.
It hits hard.
It really does. It's about decision fatigue and how we handle our future selves. Can you break that down for the listener?
It's a brilliant metaphor for discipline. Picture this. You've cooked a big dinner. You've eaten, you're full, you're tired. It's 9 p.m. You look at the kitchen sink, and it is a disaster zone.
Pots, pans, grease, everywhere.
Right. And every instinct in your body says, I am exhausted. I'll just do it in the morning.
And the sofa is right there, just calling your name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources argue that if you listen to that fatigue, you are borrowing energy from tomorrow with extremely high interest.
Wow. Yeah.
You wake up the next morning, you walk into the kitchen to get your coffee, and the first thing you see is a massive mess.
Which creates what the research calls a sad morning.
Yes, a sad morning. You feel behind before you've even started your day.
Versus pushing through that, say, 15 minutes of pain to wake up to a proud morning.
Precisely. The mantra across these materials is, don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done.
Even if done is just 10 minutes of reading.
Even if it's 5 minutes, if you push through that resistance, you wake up to a clean kitchen or a completed study session, that gives you a dopamine hit that reinforces the identity of someone who follows through.
It's about respecting your future self enough to do the work right now.
And this ties into the idea of autonomy, too. The sources talk about the difference between student A, who is forced by a teacher to study, and student B, who chooses their own materials.
Right, student B always does better.
Because the brain naturally rejects control, but it embraces choice. So choosing to clean that kitchen or do that 10-minute practice, it builds genuine discipline.
Okay, so that concept of input is the next big pillar we need to discuss. We've established we need to show up every day to keep the chain going. But what are we actually doing during that time? The sources heavily reference the input hypothesis.
This is a foundational concept in linguistics. The idea is that input, meaning reading and listening, is food.
Literally food for the brain.
Biological fuel for the language centers of your brain. If you stop consuming, your ability to speak doesn't just stall, it starves. It atrophies. You cannot output what you have in input.
But I think there's a trap here, too, because I know people who have English radio playing 24/7 in the background, while they vacuum, while they drive, even while they sleep, and they wonder why they aren't fluent.
There's a huge difference between noise and input.
Exactly.
That's the distinction between passive and active listening. Passive listening, that background noise, it's fine for getting used to the rhythm or the melody of the language.
Sure, it helps with immersion.
But it won't teach you to speak. The sources suggest active listening is required to break the plateau.
Which looks like what, practically?
It's a workout. You take a short clip, maybe just 60 seconds of a video or a podcast. First, you might watch it with subtitles in your native language just to ground the meaning so you aren't totally lost.
Okay.
Then, you switch to English subtitles to map the sound you hear to the word you see. And finally, you turn the subtitles off completely.
So you're dissecting the audio, not just letting it wash over you.
Exactly. You are actively engaging with the material.
It's interesting, though, because when it comes to reading, the advice in the notes is almost the exact opposite of dissecting. There is this very strong rule, do not look up every word.
Oh, this is critical. And it is the hardest habit to break, especially for perfectionists.
It induces so much anxiety for me. If I skip a word, I feel like I'm missing the key to the whole puzzle, like I'm cheating somehow.
That is the trap. If you stop every 6 seconds to open a dictionary or an app on your phone, you are turning a compelling story into a boring logic puzzle.
You completely kill the flow.
You kill the joy. And scientifically, you are overloading your working memory. By the time you look up the third word in a sentence, you've completely forgotten the beginning of the sentence.
So what's the alternative then? We just guess.
You triangulate. You use context clues. If the sentence is, the man was furious because the bus was late and he was soaked by the rain, and you don't know the word furious.
You look at the situation.
Right. Late bus, rain. Is he happy? Probably not. Is he dancing? No. He's probably angry. You guess angry or upset, and you just keep reading.
And the research actually says that this process, that split second of guessing, creates a stronger memory than looking it up would.
Yes, because your brain had to work for it. It had to build a neural connection. It treats the brain like a pattern matching machine rather than just a hard drive where you dump data.
That makes a lot of sense.
And to make this possible, the advice is to use graded readers or easier materials. Don't start with some dense political thriller or a massive fantasy novel.
Right. Start with a children's book if you have to.
Start with something where you already understand 80% of the words, so you actually have enough context to guess the other 20%.
Okay, so we're feeding the brain with consistent, active input. Now we have to tackle the monster we started the show with, the output, the freezing up.
The passive trap.
Right. The sources identify something called the translation lag as the main culprit here.
This is the mechanical explanation for why you freeze. When you hear English, your brain currently routes it to your native language processor to understand it. Then you formulate a response in your native language. Then you route it back to the English processor to translate it.
And then finally, you try to speak.
Exactly.
It's like trying to run high-end software on a really old computer with way too many background processes open. It's slow and it glitches.
And it is exhausting. That's why you get a literal headache after speaking a foreign language for 20 minutes. The goal of this fluency blueprint is to cut the wire to the native language entirely. You need to route directly from thought to English.
Which sounds great in theory, but how do you actually train that? How do you just delete your native language from the process?
You have to start incredibly small with your immediate physical environment. The sources suggest a technique called naming the environment.
Literally just looking at a lamp and thinking, lamp.
Yes, but only lamp. Not the word for lamp in your language and then lamp. You have to retrain your visual cortex to trigger the English label immediately.
So I look at my desk, my computer, my coffee cup.
You do this for 30 seconds a day. You are building a direct link between the physical object and the English word.
And for people who are more visual learners, I saw they suggest the sticky note method.
It's a classic for a reason. You take sticky notes and you label the fridge, the mirror, the sink.
But the point isn't just to learn the vocabulary, right? Like you probably already know the word door.
Right, the point is the visual association. Every single time you walk through the door, you see the English word. It forces that direct neural pathway to form,
Right.
bypassing your native language entirely.
And once you're past naming objects, the next level up is self-talk. I actually tried this after reading the brief today.
How'd it go?
I felt a little bit insane walking around my apartment narrating my life, but I see why it works.
I am looking for my keys. I am opening the window. It is cold today.
Yeah.
It feels silly, absolutely. But think about the pressure it removes.
There's no audience.
Exactly. You can't make a social mistake because no one's listening. You are clearing the neural overgrown path. You're laying down the pavement so that when you do have to say, I'm looking for my keys, to a real person, the sentence is already pre-assembled in your cache.
It's like a dress rehearsal for reality. But let's say we want to move past just simple sentences. We want to actually speak with flow and good pronunciation. This is where the shadowing technique comes in.
The heavy hitter.
The sources seem to rate this as the absolute #1 tool for physical fluency, but they are very, very specific about what it is and what it isn't.
Correct. Most people think shadowing means you listen to a sentence, you pause the audio, and then you repeat the sentence.
Which is just repetition.
That is repetition. That's a fine study drill, but it is not shadowing.
So clarify the distinction for us. What is true shadowing?
True shadowing is simultaneous.
Uh-uh.
You are speaking along with the audio, just a fraction of a second behind. Think of it like singing along to a song on the radio.
Well, that's a great way to think about it.
You don't wait for the singer to finish the verse before you start singing. You ride the wave with them. You match their timing.
But that sounds incredibly difficult to do with a spoken language you're still trying to learn.
It is absolute chaos at first. You will stumble. But that chaos is the point, because you have to keep up with the speaker. Your brain, physically, does not have time to stop and think about grammar rules.
It doesn't have time to translate into your native language.
Exactly. It forces you to rely on and build muscle memory. You aren't analyzing the language. You are mimicking the music of it, the intonation, the emotion, the pauses.
You're training your mouth to be an English-speaking mouth.
Yes. English requires completely different mouth shapes, tongue positions, and breathing patterns than Spanish or Japanese or German. Shadowing is gym class for your mouth muscles.
It bridges that gap between knowing the word intellectually and physically being able to produce it at speed.
And the advice for getting started isn't to shadow a fast-talking news anchor.
Please don't. You'll get frustrated and quit in 2 minutes. Start with slow material. Children's cartoons are actually amazing for this because the articulation is very clear and the emotional acting is exaggerated.
Which really helps with intonation.
Exactly. Or use a podcast designed specifically for learners and do it for just short bursts. 5 minutes while you're walking the dog or washing those dishes we talked about earlier.
I love that it turns dead time into training time. You don't need to carve out an extra hour sitting at a desk.
Which goes back to the 10-minute rule from the discipline section. Frequency beats intensity. Shadowing for 10 minutes every day is infinitely better than studying grammar books for 5 hours on a Sunday.
Let's move to context now. Because we talk about the mechanics of speaking, but what about the actual content? The sources make a really big point about how we learn vocabulary. They say we've been doing it wrong by learning isolated lists.
Oh, absolutely. They argue that words are social creatures. They do not like to be alone. If you learn the word cold on a flashcard, that's weak data. Your brain doesn't know what to do with it.
Right, like, is it cold weather, a cold personality,
Oh.
catching a cold virus? It's just too abstract.
So we should always learn in sentences.
Always. It is freezing cold outside today.
Yeah.
Now your brain has a hook. It has context. It knows how the word interacts with other words.
And for constructing our own sentences, say if we want to tell a story or talk about the news, there was a framework mentioned to stop that rambling panic, the 5 Ws.
This is a lifesaver for intermediate learners who get lost in their own sentences. You know that feeling when you start talking and you just keep adding and because you don't know how to land the plane?
Oh, I know it well. You just kind of hope the other person interrupts you eventually to save you.
Right. The 5 Ws framework gives you a template: who, what, where, when, why. And the sources add a nice bonus, which is what it means.
So instead of rambling, you mentally tick the boxes.
Exactly. The mayor, that's who, opened a new park. What? In the city center. Where? On Saturday. When? To help local families. Why?
It gives you a structure. It limits the infinite possibilities of what you could say, which actually frees you up to just speak.
Limits create freedom. It sounds paradoxical, but in language learning, having a template reduces the cognitive load so you can actually focus on your pronunciation and flow.
There was also a really interesting section on social nuance. The difference between being grammatically correct and being, well, polite or human.
This is the difference between a robot and a person. A robot says, I want coffee. Grammatically, it is perfect.
Yeah.
Subject, verb, object.
But socially, in an English-speaking context, it's very demanding.
It's blunt. It sounds like a toddler demanding a toy.
So what's the fix?
The nuance is the softener. I would like, or could I have. It's these really small shifts that take you from someone who speaks English to someone who communicates effectively.
And this extends to small talk, too. I thought this was fascinating. The sources point out that how are you is not actually a question.
It's a hello.
It's a hello. If you answer with a detailed list of your medical ailments or your life problems, you've completely broken the social contract.
To actually engage, you need better questions. What are you looking forward to this week? Or what are you working on right now? These open doors, how are you, just checks a box.
I want to zoom out a bit as we wrap this up. We've covered the chain method, the input hypothesis, the translation lag, shadowing. It's a lot of practical systems. But the final piece of research in our stack wasn't about technique at all. It was about identity.
This is my absolute favorite part of the material. It's the psychological shift from I am trying to learn English to I'm an English speaker.
Even if you're a beginner, which sounds a bit like fake it till you make it.
It is, but it's incredibly powerful. Think about the psychology here. If you define yourself as a learner, then making a mistake is a failure. It means you haven't learned the lesson yet.
Right.
But if you define yourself as a speaker, a mistake is just part of speaking. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They fumble words, they restart sentences.
But they don't have an existential crisis about it.
Exactly. So
Okay.
changing that identity lowers the stakes. It lowers the pressure.
Completely. And it changes how you measure success, too. The sources propose a new metric, the winner of the day.
I love this concept. How do we win the day?
You stop comparing yourself to the native speaker on TV. You stop comparing yourself to the polyglot on the internet who speaks 12 languages perfectly.
You compare yourself only to who you were yesterday.
Exactly. Did you do your 10 minutes of shadowing? Did you learn one new phrase in context?
If yes, you won.
You won the day. And if you stack enough winning days together, fluency isn't a maybe, it's inevitable. It's not magic, it's just compound interest.
So let's synthesize our blueprint. We are breaking the passive trap by treating English as a physical skill, not just a mental one.
We're using the chain method to build a habit that survives the bad days.
We are feeding our brains with active input, but we aren't obsessing over every unknown word.
We are killing the translation habit by labeling our world directly in English.
And we're using shadowing to train our mouths to finally keep up with our ears.
That's the whole package. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Now, before we sign off, you had one final thought you wanted to leave our listeners with today. A bit of a provocative thought from the deep end of the research.
Yes, I do. It connects back to the concept of the golden circle. Most language learners know what they are doing. They're learning English. They know how they are doing it through podcasts, apps, shadowing. But most people fail because they have a weak why. Why are you putting yourself through this? Is it to speak to a grandchild? Is it to get a job that will completely change your family's economic future? Is it to read a specific book in the original text?
If your why is just, well, it seems like a good skill to have, you will quit.
You will break the chain because the how is hard work.
The how is exhausting.
Hmm.
Shadowing is awkward. Studying when you're tired is painful. The only thing that sustains you through the how is a truly powerful why.
That is the fuel. So that is our challenge to you, the listener.
Mhm.
Figure out your why. Write it down. Put it on a sticky note on your mirror, right next to the sticky note that says mirror.
And then try that shadowing technique just once today.
Do it in the car, do it in the shower, but break the silence.
Open your mouth and let the English out.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you in the next one.